Hi, you're on the Reddit Confessions channel. The bartender poured me a glass of water without asking. Not because I looked thirsty, because I looked forgotten. The champagne was flowing at every other table. People laughed loud enough to drown out the soft jazz playing overhead. Everyone was wearing smiles like masks, tailored to perfection. And then there was me, sitting at the edge of it all, hands in my lap, heart sinking through the floor. I had arrived 7 minutes late. Not because I wanted to be fashionably mysterious, but because I stood in the car for 5 of those minutes, trying to convince myself this night would be different. That she'd see me. Not just look at me, but really see me. She didn't. When I stepped into the venue, I noticed something immediately. She was glowing, but it wasn't for me. I was background noise. Furniture. One of the waiters even asked me which table I was serving. She stood in the middle of the room like a star being born. Everyone orbiting around her. Her boss handed her a glass of Prosecco. One of her colleagues fixed the collar on her blazer. A junior guy held her purse while she adjusted her earrings. I watched it all happen with the little gift box still in my hand. It felt heavier than it should have. Inside was a silver necklace I'd ordered 3 weeks ago. It had a tiny pendant shaped like a flame. I thought it was symbolic of how she lit up my world. But now it just felt ironic. I waited. 27 minutes, to be exact. Long enough for the speeches to start. The mic screeched once, then her voice took over. I just want to thank everyone here who helped shape this journey. My mentors, my team, the ones who challenged me, and the ones who believed in me before I believed in myself. There was clapping, whistling, cheers. No mention of me. Not a nod. Not even eye contact. When her team brought out the cake with Queen of Q4 written in gold, I realized something brutal. This party wasn't just celebrating her success. It was celebrating a version of her life that didn't include me. I left before the candles were lit. Quietly. No goodbyes. No drama. The necklace? I left it on the seat of her car, still in the box, with a note inside that simply said, "It stopped feeling like I was yours a long time ago." And for the first time in years, the silence felt like mine. I didn't drive home right away. I didn't even know where I was going. I just drove. Through the city lights, past closed bookstores and glowing gas stations, with the music off and my phone buzzing in my pocket. I didn't check who it was. A part of me hoped it was her. A bigger part of me didn't care. For the first time in years, I felt like I was outside of something. Something I'd been trapped in but convinced myself was home. By the time I pulled into the old park where we used to walk our dog, back when we had time for things like walking dogs, it was nearly midnight. The air was cold and still. I left the engine running and stared at the reflection of the dashboard light in the windshield. That was when it hit me. I was the only one who had shrunk. Her world kept expanding. Mine just sat still, waiting for her to return to it. 3 years ago, Cameron couldn't sleep without my arm under her head. She used to send me emails from work with little memes or "can't wait to tell you about my meeting" messages. Now, I didn't even know what her department did. Somewhere between her first promotion and this one, we stopped being we and started being her success and my patience. At first, I told myself it was just a phase, that successful women were often busy, distracted. I took pride in not complaining, in being the supportive husband. I cooked dinner, I packed lunches, I celebrated every win, even the small ones. I kept thinking I was laying bricks toward something stronger. But that night made me realize I was just building walls around myself, waiting for her to notice the effort. She didn't. She only noticed when I stopped. I didn't text her that I had left. I didn't explain. I didn't need to. If she noticed at all, she probably thought I had gone to the bathroom and got distracted. Or maybe she didn't think about it at all. The scary part? That possibility didn't even hurt as much as it should have. When I got back to the apartment the next morning, the sun was already creeping through the blinds. Her heels were by the door, her coat tossed across the chair like always. She was asleep on the couch, makeup smudged, half covered by a blanket. Her phone buzzed once, twice, then again. Probably work. Or not. I stood there, staring at her sleeping like nothing had happened, like I hadn't walked out of her celebration as a ghost. She looked peaceful, and I felt more distant from her than ever. I took a long shower. The kind where you sit on the floor and let the water hit your back until it goes cold. No tears. Just silence. Thought. Then I packed a small bag. Not to leave forever. Not yet. But I needed space. I left her a note. Not bitter, not dramatic. Just 5 words. I need to feel seen again. That was the first time I chose myself over her. And strangely, it felt like breathing for the first time in years. 2 days passed before Cameron brought it up. Not the party, not the speech, not the cake with her name written in gold. She brought up the fact that people noticed I wasn't there for the group photo. That's what finally triggered a conversation. Not the cold shoulder she gave me. Not the gift I never handed her. Not the note I left on the kitchen table. Just one photo, posted by her coworker, tagged on Instagram, with my absence glaringly obvious. She said it casually at first, over coffee. Why didn't you stick around? People thought it was weird. I watched the steam rise from her mug like it was more interesting than the question. I didn't answer right away. Honestly, I didn't know how to. What was I supposed to say? Because I felt like a ghost at your victory parade? Because you made success look like a solo act and left me in the shadows? I just looked at her and said, I didn't feel like I belonged. That made her blink. Just once. Then she went quiet, looked at her phone, scrolled like my words hadn't landed. Maybe they hadn't. Or maybe she didn't know what to do with them. I waited for her to say something. Anything. An apology. A laugh. Even a sarcastic jab. But nothing came. She just stood up, muttered, I have a call in 10, and walked away. It was that moment, more than the party itself, that hollowed me out. Because it confirmed what I feared deep down. She didn't miss me at all. Not my presence, not my silence, not even my disappointment. She only noticed me when it affected how others saw her. That afternoon, I went through my inbox and found something I'd ignored for weeks, an invitation to an art retreat in Vermont. I almost deleted it again, but this time I didn't. I clicked confirm and booked a cheap room near the venue. It wasn't dramatic. I didn't announce it to her. I just needed a week to think, to exist without feeling like a ghost in my own home. Before I left, I laid the untouched gift, the necklace I had planned to give her, on our dresser. I placed it next to the perfume bottle she never used anymore. I didn't leave another note. If she cared enough to open the box, she'd see it. If she didn't, well, that told me enough too. The drive up to Vermont was quiet. I didn't play music, didn't call anyone. Just let the trees blur by as I tried to remember what I used to like about being alive before my marriage turned into a waiting room. The retreat wasn't anything fancy, just a handful of artists in a converted barn, working on their craft, eating simple meals together, and asking each other questions that didn't begin with, what do you do for a living? I sketched more in those first 2 days than I had in 6 months. And not just faces or buildings. I drew feelings, shapes of loneliness, outlines of people leaning away from each other, a hand reaching, and another already letting go. It felt freeing, like I'd removed something heavy from my chest. I stopped checking my phone. I didn't even tell Cameron where I was. Not to be cruel, but because I needed to know if she'd care enough to ask. Spoiler, she didn't. It happened on the third night of the retreat. I had just finished a rough charcoal sketch of 2 faceless figures, one standing in a spotlight, the other fading into the background. It was a bit dramatic, sure, but it felt right. Honest. I snapped a photo of it, thinking maybe I'd post it someday, then shoved my phone back into my jacket pocket. I didn't want distractions. I hadn't even looked at my notifications since arriving. But when I finally did, sometime after midnight, one new message stood out like a lightning strike in a clear sky. It wasn't from Cameron. It was from her sister, Jade. All it said was, "You okay?" Saw Cam's story. Didn't sit right with me. My heart kicked a little. I opened Instagram, hands slightly trembling. I hadn't looked at Cameron's profile in days. I didn't want to, but now I had to know. There it was. A photo from the promotion night. She was holding a champagne flute, eyes shining under string lights. Her boss stood beside her, arm loosely around her back. The caption read, "Grateful for those who truly support me through it all." Heart emoji. Fire emoji. Nothing more. The part that got me wasn't the photo. It was what wasn't there me. I had taken a dozen photos of her in that same dress the morning of the event. Helped her choose her earrings. Waited outside the salon with a latte while she got her hair done. And now it looked like I'd never existed in that night at all. I replied to Jade with a short, "I left early. Didn't feel welcome." Her response came fast. "Honestly, I don't think you're wrong. I've been watching how she acts lately. It's not fair to you." I didn't know what to say. Jade and I were never close. She always kept her distance when Cameron and I had disagreements. For her to reach out now, that meant something had shifted. The next morning, I finally saw a missed call from Cameron. Just one. No voicemail. No text. But I noticed something strange when I opened her contact. An unsent message in the draft window. My chest tightened. I clicked into it, half expecting an apology, or even just a "where are you?" Instead, it said, "Can you not make this about you right now?" She had typed it, and never sent it. But somehow, reading those words was worse than if she had hit send. It meant she knew I was hurt. She just didn't think it mattered enough to acknowledge. Not really. In her world, everything always came back to her image, her story, her rise. And I was just supposed to stay quiet in the wings, clapping politely. I closed my phone, tossed it on the bed, and stared at the ceiling. That was the moment I realized something that still haunts me. You can be in the same room with someone, sleep in the same bed, and still not exist in their reality. That night, during our group dinner at the retreat, one of the artists, a woman named Rena, looked at me and said, "You always look like you're bracing for an earthquake that never comes." I didn't know how to respond. Maybe because she was right. I had lived so long waiting for something to break. I didn't know what to do when it finally did. I went back to my room and deleted the photo of her from my phone's lock screen. Not out of anger. Not even sadness. Just acceptance. That version of her, the one I fell in love with, she wasn't coming back. And maybe neither was I. I didn't answer her call the next day. Or the one after. It wasn't revenge. It wasn't strategy. It just didn't feel necessary anymore. I had spent so long hoping she'd reach out that when she finally did, I realized I no longer cared about what she would say, only why it took this long. By then, I had already spent 5 days surrounded by strangers who somehow made me feel more visible than my wife had in years. The silence between us had become a comfort, a clarity. But on the 6th day, her voice finally caught up with me. In a voicemail, 1 minute and 12 seconds. She sounded composed, almost rehearsed. She said she noticed I was gone, and that if this was about the party, then maybe we should talk through our expectations better. Her exact words. Expectations. Like I had missed a deadline or forgotten to copy her on an email. There was no "I'm sorry." No "I miss you." Not even a flicker of emotion. Just clean, professional phrasing and a thin coat of forced concern. The kind of tone she used when handling client complaints. And for some reason, that made me angrier than if she had screamed. Later that evening, while cleaning out my inbox, I found a message from someone I hadn't thought about in a long time, Owen. He was Cameron's ex. The guy before me. The one she used to describe as passionate but immature. We had never spoken. I didn't even know how he found my email. But the message was short and sharp. "Hey man, not sure if this is still your address. I'm only reaching out because I think you deserve to know something. She reached out to me a few weeks ago. Nothing happened. I shut it down. Just figured it's time you stop thinking you're the problem." I read it 3 times, each time slower than the last. I didn't know whether to feel betrayed or relieved. She hadn't cheated, not technically, but she had reached for something. Someone. In the background of all her success, she had felt the need to look elsewhere. And the worst part was, she never told me. Not even a hint. I closed the laptop and sat there for what felt like hours, staring at nothing. Not because of Owen's message. Not because of the party. But because I finally understood the truth I'd been avoiding. Cameron didn't hate me. She didn't resent me. She just didn't see me anymore. And maybe that was the most painful thing of all. Being slowly erased by someone you still love. The retreat was ending the next day. People were packing up, exchanging numbers, hugging goodbye. I stayed late that night in the studio, finishing a painting I had started the first day. It was abstract, full of red smears and black streaks, and in the center, a pale, unfinished figure standing under a cracked spotlight. I didn't sign it. I didn't name it. I just left it there, propped against the back wall, like the echo of a voice no one remembered to hear. Back in the room, I listened to her voicemail again. This time, I wasn't angry. I just felt hollow, like I'd finally reached the end of something that had been quietly dying for years. She had called. She had spoken, but nothing she said made me want to go back. When I got home from Vermont, I expected the apartment to feel cold, maybe even unfamiliar, but instead, it felt empty in a way I couldn't explain. Not just physically, emotionally, atmospherically. Her scent was gone. The clutter she usually left scattered on the kitchen counter had been wiped clean. Her favorite throw blanket wasn't on the couch. It was as if she had erased herself before I could. At first, I thought she had gone to stay with her sister, but when I opened the bedroom closet, most of her clothes were still there. That made it worse somehow, like she had vanished mid-thought. I didn't text her. I didn't want to. I needed to sit in that silence and figure out what I was still holding on to. Was it guilt? Love? Or just the habit of waiting for her to change? I spent 2 nights sleeping in our bed alone. I didn't touch her side, didn't move her pillow. On the 3rd evening, just as the sky turned that strange orange-gray before rain, there was a knock at the door. I opened it, and there she was, Cameron, but not the version I knew. This wasn't the poised, unshakable woman I married. She looked pale, nervous, like she'd been rehearsing the moment all day and still wasn't ready. She didn't say hi. She didn't ask if she could come in. She just stood there holding a white envelope, fingers trembling slightly. "Can we talk?" she asked, voice thinner than I remembered. I stepped aside without a word and let her in. She sat at the edge of the couch, like a guest, not a wife. She didn't look around the room or ask how I'd been. Instead, she placed the envelope on the coffee table and said, "I wrote everything down because I don't think I can say it out loud without messing it up." I didn't open it. I didn't move. I just stared at her. She glanced away and added, "I didn't reach out to Owen because I wanted something from him. I did it because, I don't know, I felt untethered. I was trying to feel something familiar. It was stupid. I didn't even think about what it would do to you." That was the first time I'd heard her admit anything with actual vulnerability. It should have softened me. It didn't. "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked. She shrugged helplessly. "Because I was afraid. Because I knew the second I said it, it would make it real. And I didn't want to admit that I've been drifting away from you for months. That I've been treating your love like it was a constant I could ignore." I still didn't open the envelope. Then she said something that struck me like a slap across the face. "The night of the party, when you left, I was actually relieved. I didn't have to keep pretending you were part of a life I no longer recognized." I laughed. Not because it was funny, because it was finally honest. She looked like she regretted the words the second they came out, but it was too late. They were in the room now, hanging between us like smoke. "I loved you," I said quietly. "Every small version of you. Even the ones who didn't notice me." Tears welled in her eyes, but I didn't flinch. I didn't reach for her hand. I stood up, picked up the envelope, and said, "I'll read this. But I don't know if anything inside will change what I already felt the moment I walked out of that party, that I've been more alone with you than without you." She didn't argue. She just nodded, stood up slowly, and walked to the door. She looked back once, like she was trying to memorize the room, and then she was gone. I didn't open the envelope right away. It sat on the table for hours while I paced the apartment, trying to decide whether I actually wanted to read what she had written, or if it was better to leave things exactly as they were, unfinished, but honest. There was something final about a letter. Once you read it, you can't unread it. Once the truth is in front of you, it demands a response. And I wasn't sure I had any left in me to give. But sometime after midnight, when the only light in the room was coming from the street lamp outside the window, I opened it. Just one folded page. No greeting. No "Dear Doug." Just lines, sharp, careful, like she had rewritten them a dozen times before putting pen to paper. She started by explaining what I already knew, that the party was more about image than celebration. That in her world, appearances weren't just important, they were survival. She said, "You being there reminded me of who I was before all of this. And I couldn't let that version of me show." I paused there. Let that sink in. She wasn't just ignoring me. She was actively suppressing me. Like I was some dusty photo she kept hidden in a drawer while she showed the world a curated life. She went on, admitting things. Not just about Owen, but others too. Moments, messages, flirtations she claimed didn't go anywhere, but still crossed lines I didn't know existed. "It wasn't about wanting someone else," she wrote. "It was about wanting to feel powerful in a way I didn't when I was with you. With you, I felt safe. Predictable. But I didn't feel seen." That line. That one hit like a knife. She didn't feel seen. I had spent years holding her up, rearranging my life to make space for hers, quietly adjusting my dreams so hers could expand. I had given her the softest version of me, the kind that never argued when she worked late, never questioned her priorities, never made her choose. And she was the one who felt invisible? The letter wasn't cruel, but it wasn't kind either. It was the type of honesty that strips the shine off everything you once thought was sacred. She said she didn't regret marrying me, but she regretted who she became while being married to me, that she sometimes resented my stillness. that my patience felt like a mirror she couldn't stand to look into. It ended with a sentence I still haven't decided how to interpret. If you're reading this, then you deserve better than the version of me I've become. There was no signature, no goodbye, just that final sentence, as if she were stepping back from her own reflection and finally admitting she didn't like what she saw. I sat there for a long time afterward. No tears, just a weird mix of validation and grief. I wasn't crazy. I wasn't imagining the distance. I wasn't asking for too much. But the truth was worse than I expected. She had been drifting, not because I failed her, but because I reminded her of everything she was running from. Her former self, her vulnerability, her real life. It's strange. You think closure will bring peace. But sometimes, it just makes the silence louder. 3 weeks passed. No more letters. No more calls. Not even a text. At first, I thought it was her way of giving me space. Then I realized it was her way of avoiding responsibility. She had said what she needed to say, unloaded her version of closure. But me? I was still in the fallout zone, rebuilding from rubble she never turned around to see. I went back to painting. Nothing professional, nothing polished. Just canvas, color, and silence. It felt good to make something that didn't have to impress anyone. To not worry whether it would be liked or shared or posted. I stopped checking her social media. I didn't care if she was posting more rooftop parties or filtered smiles. That version of her, the one who needed the world to clap louder than her partner did, was no longer mine to mourn. But life has a twisted sense of timing. One morning, I opened the door to a soft knock and found her standing there again. Same perfume, same guarded smile. But her eyes looked tired, older somehow. She didn't ask to come in. She just said, "I thought you should know. I'm resigning." I told them I need a break. Maybe more than that. I stood there, waiting for the part where she asked me to come with her. The part where she said she missed me, that she was ready to try again. But it never came. And weirdly, I was glad. "I'm glad you're doing what you need to," I said quietly. "But I'm not waiting anymore." She nodded slowly, the smile fading into something sadder, something real. "I didn't expect you to be," she whispered. Then she stepped back, eyes flickering over the doorway one last time before turning away. That was it. No grand goodbye, no romantic plea. Just two people finally facing what they had become and accepting it with dignity. And you know what? That was enough. These days, I'm different. Not louder, not colder, just more me. I teach a few local art classes now. One of my students is an older woman who paints sunflowers over everything, even cityscapes. She says, even sad places deserve something bright. I like that. I even started putting small gold sunflowers in the corner of every piece I finish. A little reminder that growth can still happen in broken ground. I don't hate Cameron. I don't wish things had turned out differently. Because if she hadn't disappeared into her own ambition, I might have never realized how small I had let myself become. And if she hadn't ignored me that night, I might still be trying to earn the attention of someone who no longer had room for me. Sometimes the best thing someone can do for you is leave the space they've been filling with absence. Thank you for staying with me through this emotional journey on Reddit Confessions. If you've ever experienced a moment that forced you to rediscover yourself, or a chapter in your life that closed more gently than expected, share it in the comments. What's one quiet moment from history, big or small, that changed everything for someone? Let's talk about it. And remember, even when someone forgets your worth, that doesn't mean you have to. See you in the next story.